Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The man who drove his van into Muslim worshippers outside a mosque in North London has been sentenced to life with a minimum of 43 years in prison. Darren Osborne killed Makram Ali, who was 51, and injured 12 other people in the attack in Finsbury Park last June. Our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford is at Woolwich Crown Court. And Daniel, the length of the sentence reflects the motive and the fact that Osborne intended to kill as many people as he could.
Yes, and of course the sentence also reflects that this was a terrorist murder, one that was motivated by politics and religious hatred. The judge remarking today at how rapidly Darren Osborne was radicalised on the internet by people who claimed to be leaders, but in fact were determined to spread hate.
Back, everyone, back!
Darren Osborne was seized at the scene of the Finsbury Park attack after ploughing his van into a group of Muslims trying to kill as many as possible.
Just have a seat up there for us, mate.
Convicted of murder and attempted murder yesterday, his 102 previous convictions for violence, dishonesty and drugs offences were outlined to the court today, as was the devastation caused to the family of Makram Ali, the man he murdered. Outside court, his daughter, with his tearful wife by her side, spoke of the family's love for him.
He will never be forgotten. He will always stay in our hearts. His laughter will echo the walls of our home. His smile will be reflected in our eyes, and his memory will be alive in our conversations.
Darren Osborne's absurd defence that a man called Dave was driving during the attack was scorned by the judge. Addressing him directly, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb said, "An intelligent British jury saw through your pathetic last-ditch attempt to deceive them." She then jailed him for life, saying the appropriate minimum term for this terrorist murder is 43 years, which means he can't be released until he's at least 90 years old. Today, the judge also chose to praise the imam who protected Osborne after the attack. She said he had the strength to do the right thing under pressure, to respond to evil with good. Daniel Sanford, BBC News, at Woolwich Crown Court.
Darren Osborne, who is 48, will spend the next 43 years of his life in jail. He was sentenced today for murder and attempted murder when he drove his van into a crowd outside a mosque in North London last June. The judge said the death of worshipper Makram Ali was a terrorist murder and a suicide mission by a man whose mind had been poisoned by hate. The daughter of the victim described her father as a peaceful man who had no bad thoughts for anyone. Here's our security editor, Rohit Kachru.
They clutched each other for support as they emerged from the court hearing this afternoon. The family of Makram Ali have each other's support, but today they feel they have justice too.
The last few months have been very hard for our family, as we have tried to adjust to life without our father. It was particularly hard for us to have to sit in court and listen to Darren Osborne deny he had done anything wrong. We are very pleased with the guilty verdict.
Darren Osborne was behind the terrorist attack last June, and today he was sentenced to life in prison, a minimum term of 43 years for driving a van into a crowd of Muslim worshippers. Mr. Ali was killed.
We cannot imagine the trauma he felt in his last few minutes. But we choose to remember our father with happier thoughts. He will never be forgotten. He will always stay in our hearts. His laughter will echo the walls of our home. His smile will be reflected in our eyes, and his memory will be alive in our conversations.
Osborne drove from Cardiff to London, scoping out the location before he attacked.
The 9 men have been released on bail.
His Islamophobia had been inflamed by a TV drama about grooming gangs.
I'd have another glass of water, boss.
Do you want to just jump up on that seat there for us?
The road to radicalisation led to custody, then conviction. Today, the judge said, this was a terrorist attack. You intended to kill. In short, you allowed your mind to be poisoned by those who claimed to be leaders. Osborne had appeared before the courts 33 times for 102 offences. And for this one, he'll be 91 by time he's eligible for release.
Rohit, is this terror attack, as the judge so clearly made it apparent, going to change anything?
No evidence of that yet, Alistair. Downing Street responded to this today and responded particularly to the most concerning element, the most worrying aspect of this case, the speed of the radicalisation process. 3 to 4 weeks in this case. Across the board, it seems to be increasingly short. They blame the internet companies and said that they need to go further and faster in terms of taking down terrorist material. We've heard this many times before. This is a recurring narrative. The problem really is that the internet companies feel that they're doing quite a lot already. They say that publicly. Privately, some say that the UK government doesn't seem to really understand the issue. And so this is a debate, the internet companies versus the UK government, that is a static one at present.
Right. Rohit, thank you.
Now, let's get reaction to the sentencing of the Finsbury Park mosque attacker Darren Osborne. The judge told Osborne that he'd allowed his mind to be poisoned by far-right material online. Well, Professor Anthony Glees is the director of the Centre for Security and Intelligence Studies at the University of Buckingham. He joins us now from Oxford. Thank you very much for joining us. I just want your reaction, first of all. And we were hearing from the court that Mr. Osborne was radicalised. A lot of what he was reading, extreme material online, and that he was radicalised in a matter of weeks. Does that surprise you?
Well, the speed does surprise me. The fact doesn't surprise me. And people like me have been saying for, really years now, we need to get a grip on what is being broadcast by the social media, predominantly by the social media, but not only by the social media. In the case of the Finsbury Park terrorist, Darren Osborne, it seemed very clear from the evidence given in court that the initial impulse to become a terrorist came from watching a BBC drama called Three Girls about the Rochdale sexual grooming case. So this wasn't something online. This was something that was being broadcast by the BBC. Yes, it was confirmed by what Osborne picked up on the internet. And that is a very serious concern. We've also read today in the newspapers that a report commissioned by the government 10 years ago and headed by Professor Tanya Byron, one of our country's most noted psychologists, made a number of recommendations to try and keep our children safe. The government has done only 50% at the very best of what she recommended. And her most important single recommendation, that there should be regulation and a watchdog to ensure there was regulation, that's been completely ignored. This is the juncture where national safety and the safety of our children crosses over into national security and the generation of terrorism in our very divided country.
But putting extreme material online is one thing. Broadcasters broadcasting documentaries or docudramas about sensitive issues is another. You can't stop that, can you?
Well, I think you can actually. I'm a firm believer in a free press, absolutely. I'm a firm believer in excellent news, and I'm a firm believer in excellent documentaries. But the whole point about the drama, The Three Girls, was that it was meant to inflame our passions. And you may say, rightly so, and I would understand that. But the Rochdale grooming issue and the grooming issue in Oxford, not far from where I live, these are very, very traumatic things. And is public safety helped if they are turned not from news, not from documentaries, but being into plays that play on our emotions? I would say no. And I think there needs to be much firmer regulation. And of course, Theresa May rightly says she has hopes in some way to introduce regulation into the social media. The hard truth is, though, that many of the companies that put this stuff out are not UK-based. And if they're not UK-based, she can jump up and down and stamp her feet as much as she likes, but nothing is going to happen.
So if she could do one thing, I mean, she has talked about clamping down on what is online and trying to hold some of the big internet companies more accountable. If she could do one thing, what do you think she could do relatively quickly to make a change here?
Well, one thing that could be done relatively quickly, but I don't think she'd want to do it, would be to get our people, GCHQ in particular, onto the offensive. That is to say, to use electronic measures to take down the sites that are radicalizing and putting out extreme material, whether it's sexual filth or political filth. She could do that by pressing the button, because that's a British thing. But I don't think she will want to get into an offensive war, unfortunately. The other thing that she can do is try to convince our new best friends in the White House that they need to put pressure on American companies to fit in with what are British and indeed European norms, and that we shouldn't be taking the nonsense from the internet service providers that all they're doing is providing a service. They're publishers like you are, like the BBC is, like our British press, all of which are regulated because national safety and national security are of prime importance in this very divided island of ours.
Professor Anthony Gleeson, good to talk to you. Thank you very much.